Can you see anything?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, today me and Daniela are going to talk about the book Their Eyes Were Watching God. This is a novel published on 1937 by Zora Neale Hurston.
Okay. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing okay. So as Rocio mentioned, we're going to talk about Their Eyes Were Watching God. The authoress of the book is Zora Neale Hurston. She was born in 1891 in a tiny town in Alabama. She was the fifth of 8 children in the Hurston household. Her father was named John, and he was a carpenter, a Baptist, and also a preacher. Her mother, Lucy, was a former school teacher, which means the same. And when Zora was 1 year old, they moved to Eatonville, Florida. The setting that the story will take place. Eatonville, Eatonville, this small city owned by only Black people, was the first incorporated Black municipality in the United States. In 1904, when Zora was 13 years old, she lost her mother. In the same year, her father removed Zora from her education. Therefore, Zora was sent to her brother's house in order to take care of his children. And Zora was very energetic and also eager to leave the responsibility of her brother's household, because her plans. Eventually, she became a member of a traveling theater when she was 16 years old, and subsequently he began domestic work in a white household. And the woman that Zora worked for wrote her very first book, which all the magic began. And so she attended high school education, college education as well, and he also had worked as a waitress and as a manicurist, in order to survive her adulthood. And he attended, as I mentioned, many universities, as for example Howard University, and she graduated as from the anthropology program. So Zora became an anthropologist. She began writing and publishing some of her writings in contents, newspapers, and also magazines. And she also became part of the Harlem Renaissance movement. Yeah.
Okay. Next, we have the context. This book is set during the Harlem Renaissance period, which was an intellectual, social, and artistic awakening centered in Harlem, obviously Manhattan, New York City, from 1918 to 1930s. It was like during the 20s. It was also called by some the Negro movement, since it reclaimed the Afro-American culture and new African Americans, could express themselves across the urban areas. Their music, their works, books, and art.
The tone of this book is joyful and celebrational. This is strongly connected with the language used in the story that Rocio is going to talk about that later in order to make some connections. The setting is the rural Florida in the early 20th century, especially in Eatonville. If we can see here on the map, we have Florida, the state of Florida, Eatonville, and the Everglades. The Everglades is another setting throughout that takes place throughout the story.
Next, we have the language and the narrator. And this is a combination of two different languages and narrators. The language that this book starts with is poetic and educated. The narrator is, this story starts with a third-person omniscient narrator, and that narrator is writes in a poetic and educated way. And then after the story starts to develop, the narrator changes to first person, where Janie, the protagonist, starts starts to narrate her own story, and then the language changes towards an ungrammatical and some sort of rural southern dialect, which we can see in this quote above the picture. It represents how people would talk at the time in a very educated way and like a folk speech. And here we can also see that the way in which Janie tells or writes, narrates her story was written in a phonetic way, in which the words are written down as they sound. And now we're going to jump right on the plot.
Okay, so first, the novel begins with a statement about the differences between the dreams of men's and women's dreams. The women's and men's dreams. For instance, it says that men's dreams are like distant ships. If we reflect on this statement, we could say that men can achieve anything in life. They set some goals, and then eventually they get them. They pursued their dreams. However, for women back in those times, was different. Therefore, they couldn't wait and watch for their ship to come in. For them, the mere possession of the dream, it was really matters. So the dream is the truth, and that's very poetic and a nice starting of the book. So after that, Janie, who is the protagonist of this book, has been gone from Eatonville, the setting that we were previously talking about. So she was gone for a very long time, and she comes back to this place. When she walks through the town in direction to her old home, there were people staring at her, and also judging her. These town people were very cruel and envious, and they were wondering why she is returning. Why is she returning in such dirty clothes? Because she used to wear a nice dress and dressed in a proper manner. So they were also wondering where her husband is. And Jenny is described as a beautiful black woman who the men easily notice her because of her beautiful hair and also her breasts. And women, therefore, are very envious of her. So they were very angry as well that she didn't stop and explain herself the reason behind that why she was returning to Eatonville without saying no words. Phoebe Watson is Janie's best friend, and she defends Janie's silence, saying that maybe she doesn't want to tell her story. So Phoebe leaves this gossiping woman, in order to take some supper to Janie. And then she finds Janie sitting on the back porch of her home. And they hear some laughter from the women across the street. And they feel ashamed, but they also describe the terrible jealousy and feel pettiness for these women that were so jealous of Janie. So Phoebe says that she must or she should tell her story in order to stop the gossiping and in order to communicate with the community. But Janie doesn't want to waste her time. So from this part, Jenny begins her tale, which makes the body of the novel. And she tells Phoebe that she has $900 in her bank account, which TK, her husband, never touched her money. He recently passed away, the husband, and she lived with him in the Everglades, this other place that we could see on the map. And now she has come back to Eatonville. So Janie begins telling the story of her life. She says that she has never met her mother, neither her mother nor her father, because she was raised by her grandmother. So her grandmother worked as a nanny for white children in the Washburn family, which was a white family. And therefore, Jenny grows up playing with these children, these white children. So she calls her grandmother Nanny because she would hear these children to call her that name. And Jenny doesn't know that she was black until a photograph is taken, because she thought that she was like this white girl, and she realizes she isn't white when she was 16 years old because of this photo. So when she goes to school, she would be bullied by the other black children because Janie would dress nicely and more appropriately because of the place that she lives, because of the family that she is involved, and Nanny works for them. So Nanny didn't like the fact that she was left aside. So she asked the family to help her to buy some land, in order to move out and move on with their lives and just to get a normal life. So in some part of the story, Janie loves to spend the afternoons lying under a pear tree, staring into the branches of the tree, because it was really like very passionate, and she admires the blossom of the tree and also the bees and the whole nature thing. And one afternoon, She was thrilled by the beauty of the bees pollinated the fair blossoms, and she noticed that she was feeling this awakened sexuality. And in one moment, she sees a boy, who is Johnny Taylor, a boy that she didn't find very attractive at first, but due to this whole awakening thing, she now he calls her attention, so she kisses him, and Nani sees the whole situation, so she calls her inside, and she slaps on her face because she realizes that Jenny was growing up. Therefore, she was at a certain age in which women are supposed to get married. So she tells her that she must get married to Logan Helix, an old potato farmer who owns a farm. And Jenny does not agree on this matter because Logan is an ugly and old person, so she doesn't feel attracted to him. And Nani is strict and repeats that she must get married to someone who will protect her and keep her safe. Nani wants protection for Jenny because it's hard to be, according to the book, don't mind my words, it's hard to be a black woman in the society. It has some implications. So she wants to feel secure, and she wants the best for her granddaughter. So after that, and in order to explain herself, Nanny narrates to Janie the terrible experiences that she has been through. For example, she was a slave when she was younger, and she lived in these plantations that we have been talking about lately. And she also remembers the day that the men on the plantation left in order to fight in the Civil War. And she recently gave birth to Leafy. Leafy was Janie's mother, and the master of the plantation raped Nanny. Therefore, from that assault came Leafy, and the mistress of the plantation slapped Nanny many times because of the similarity among this child and the white community, because the skin was lighter, you know. So this mistress threatened her, and she tells her that she's going to sell this baby into slavery. Therefore, Nanny runs away, and a few months later, the war ends. Therefore, Nanny never had to be a slave again. So Nanny raised her baby in the same place she raised Janie, at the Washburn's house. This house that Janie was raised with the white children, you know. So she wanted Leafy to grow up and become a school teacher. However, Leafy was also raped by her own school teacher when she was 17. So the story for Black women back on those times was the same, to be assaulted by white people and then suffer the consequences. So Leafy became pregnant with Janie, and after Janie was born, Leafy became also an alcoholic, so she ran away from home. Therefore, Janie never had the opportunity to meet her mother nor her father. So these negative experiences make Nanny determined to make life easy for her granddaughter. So before marrying Logan, the farmer, Janie tries to figure out whether marriage would be a suitable way to end her loneliness. So she spends plenty of time under these things and understand how marriage might make her feel love. Because she doesn't love Logan, but she hopes to. And Janie then moves into Logan's house and she doesn't like it. And after 3 months, she has no love for him. So she visits Nanny. And Nanny says that she would love Logan eventually and that he has some money and 60 acres of land, which was very important for that time because that means privilege. So he would be able to protect her and give her a decent life. She wants to feel love, but she doesn't feel it. So Nanny tells her that when the time passes, she will feel better, but the situation doesn't change. So Nanny starts praying because of the unhappiness of Jenny, and she did the best she could. And after that, Nanny dies a month later. And after that, Janie waits 9 months in order to the summer to come again, and she feels very upset. So she stands at the gate of the place that she lived, and she begins to expect things because staring at the gate could mean I don't know, a new possibility. So there's one morning that Logan wakes up and tells Janie that he's going away and that she must do the hard work while he was gone. But Janie isn't happy about this. Therefore, eventually, Janie hears whistling outside the barn, and she sees like this stylish dressed man, a man who is black but seems to be acting white, and whose name is Joe Starks. He's from Georgia, and he has worked for white people all his life. This person heard that there's a new town called Eatonville, who's populated only by black people. So he's very interested on become one of the town's leaders, and he intends to seduce Janie in order to join him into this whole new journey. And Janie was feel like this excitement and was considering leaving Logan, and she eventually leaves him. Logan threatens to kill Janie with an axe, so Janie considered this situation as an escape, and she ran away with Joe Starks. So they head to Green Cove Springs and get married before sundown.
Okay, later they get married, as Danny said, and they spent almost 20 years married. When they moved to Eatonville, Florida, which was all black city, Joe becomes mayor and their status takes off very fast. Joe was a businessman who was very charismatic and good at talking to people. So he makes some businesses and buys some land in order to make the city grow, and therefore he's elected mayor. And Jenny becomes the wife of the mayor. Obviously, they are now wealthy as far as Afro-American people could at the time. and they spend their lives in this city. But Joe shows up how chauvinist and how abusive he was. Joe is characterized by being very chauvinist and by abusing Janie. He limited her wife with rules and obligations as a married woman. He wouldn't let Janie talk in public or give her opinion or decide in any matter. So he was the main visible face of the marriage and of their businesses, since they, besides having being major, they had a shop. So they were very economically stable at the time. But Janie obviously was feeling very sad and very dismissed by Joe's attitudes. And during the years, Janie never really loved Joe. It was just an convenience marriage. Joe silences Janie all the time and totally dismisses her opinions and beliefs. And after some years have passed, Janie is very tired of the situation and doesn't want to be in the shadows anymore. Then Joe accuses Janie of acting too young for her age, since obviously he was very, not very old, but definitely older than Janie. And as years passed, this was every time more noticeable, and Janie would remain being youthful and happy, but Joe would demonstrate to be much older and to make Janie following all these rules. So Janie cannot bear this anymore and explodes against Joe, and she insults his manhood and pride, which was very, very hard for Joe, since he thought about himself as a man, as a really successful businessman. So his pride was hurt, and then he gets sick as a in his kidney wasn't working anymore, and so he lies on his deathbed. And after everything that Janie said to him, he does not want Janie around, and he throws her out of their house. And he does not want to see Janie ever again. But Janie comes into Joe's room one last time and to tell him how she felt, and she speaks her mind. So she tells everything she was feeling and everything she had in mind to Joe. After that, finally Joe dies and Janie inherits everything. Now she is the owner of the shop, but she cannot be the mayor, but she owns everything they had. Then after that, she remains a widow for some years. She lives as a happy single woman, working on the shop and living her life until she meets Tea Cake, which was 12 years younger than Janie. So the old husband's tradition breaks here, and she finds true love with Tea Cake. She has always dreamed of this true love, so she finally meets Tea Cake, which was a very funny man. He was a musician, so he would sing and play the guitar for Janie. And Janie really felt comfortable with Tea Cake. Even though they experiment some jealousy and some events during the time they were together in between, but they end up together, marrying. They start to work in the Everglades fields, mingling with migrant workers. So she leaves the shop and everything she had. As Danny said, all the money was into a bank account, and she leaves to the Everglades field with Tea Cake to work on the fields and to live away from all the past Janie had. So they have fun and they go through many different adventures and moments together. And the rising action ends. Then it comes the climax of the story, which was an hurricane. This hurricane was coming and people would escape looking for shelter. But Tea Cake remains at work and does not want to leave because he was very focused on producing money and to have money. Since Jenny already had money, he wanted to be the man for Jenny who would support her as well. So he remains working at this field, but the hurricane strikes suddenly and everyone has to escape. And obviously, as Tea Cake and Jenny stated there, they were in danger. And while they were running out of the Everglades, Jenny is attacked by a rabid dog. A rabid dog was this dog with a sickness that the dog could bite to you and you could die at that time, obviously. And Tea Cake fights with this rabid dog, saving Jenny. Unfortunately, Tea Cake is beaten by the beast, by this dog, and gets rabies. So he is sick and probably would die. Since at that time, rabies was really hard to find a cure for. Afterwards, rabies transforms Tea Cake's jealousy, this normal jealousy that he had towards Jenny at that time, in quotation marks, into an aggressive paranoia. So the jealousy that he felt transformed and escalated into some very aggressive craziness. And he takes a gun in all these events of aggression. He takes a gun and in a rage of violence, he threatens Janie that with the gun to kill her. Luckily, Janie has a gun too, can find a gun, and she is able to shoot Tea Cake before he could kill her. Obviously, this is the most complex part of the story, since Janie was really going through a stressful, critical moment in here because her beloved wanted to kill her, and obviously she didn't want to kill TK because she loved him, was deeply in love with him. But rabies would turn the mind of TK into some very dark thoughts, and she, with all the sadness, she has to kill TK. Here is the gun that they used. The following action, after all what happened here, she is put in a trial for the murder because she killed Tea Cake. And in the trial, she is found innocent because everyone knew that because of the hurricane and the rabies he had, he got crazy. After the funeral of Tea Cake, Janie returns to Eatonville, where she meets with her friend Phoebe Watson, and that's where the book started. By she coming back home, with all her clothes dirty, and talking to her friend Phoebe. So the story ends up at the beginning of the book. And here is a summary of the plot: the introduction, the rising action, the climax in the falling action, and the resolution of the story. We're going to jump right into the characters now. Danny?
Yeah,
Are you there?
I can
Okay.
see the. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Just see the resolution, but I believe it's Janie's, Janie,
Mhm.
or Granny. The slide got stuck. Okay, however,
Can you see
so
the PowerPoint,
um,
or is it your
excuse me.
computer that got frozen?
Maybe, but
But it's the
never
characters.
mind. We just keep going. So
Yes.
we have, yeah, we have a few characters to describe. For instance, I get to describe Nani and Janie. Nani, on the one hand, is is a very strong woman, regardless the situation and the life that she got, because she experienced slavery and awful marriages as well. Um, she was assaulted by her master, and she was um, mistreated by her um, mistress. However, we can say that she gives great advice to Janie, and she guides her through lives, because she knows better, and she wants Janie to know better as well. She wants better opportunities for Janie's life, and also her education, and she sees this opportunity into marriage. So now we have Janie. Janie is the protagonist of the story. She toughened out three marriages, and she is very passionate about the natural surroundings. Sorry, she on the other side, she has a tragic backstory, and throughout her life, she's dealing with racism and sexism, because some of the men she married dismissed her. Therefore, she became submissive, and she stopped complaining at some point. However, she finally finds her own selfhood, which is one of the most important topics at the end of the story. Lucio, go ahead.
Yes. Well, we have in here Logan Killicks, which was the first husband of Janie. He was a farmer, a very chauvinist, old, ugly guy who shows little affection towards Janie. Um, and the book also talks about how he had smelly feet and how Janie was disgusted by that. But he was very um, cold towards Janie, and his personality was very survival and business oriented. Then we have Joe Starks, which was the Janie's second husband, was a very charismatic, ambitious man. He later becomes a politician, the mayor of the city, and a businessman as well. Um, he is the biggest landlord in there. Um, he's also chauvinist, aggressive, and authoritarian towards what is his role on society. And obviously, he dismisses and ignores Janie's thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. Then we have Tea Cake, which was the last husband of Janie. And as we saw before, he was a very funny, caring, and loving man. He was good at communicating, and he and Janie would have a really good relationship in general. This was Janie's true love, according to the book. He's adventurous and spontaneous, and that's what Janie loves about him. He's also a gambler and a musician. As we saw, he was a gambler, and that caused some of the problems they had in their marriage. He was also a musician, and he was very hardworking, and he wanted to have money to help Janie and support her. Then we have the symbolisms that this book provides us. Well, we have the sun first, and in the story, the sun and the sunrise is mentioned many times, and in the scenes that the sun is mentioned, this symbol wants to convey the idea of hope, of happiness, and a new start. So whenever Janie is feeling down or is leaving a husband, or a husband would die, she would go and see the sun rise and find inspiration in that. And then we have the guns talked about at the ending of the story, and the guns represent power and manhood. So Janie never touched a gun before, and then therefore when she takes this gun to save her life and shoot tea cake, she that moment is decisive for her, since she is able to stand for herself and to fight a man, to defend her life, and to take this power for herself, right? Then we have the other symbolisms that Danny would explain now.
Yes. So first we have Janie's headdress, which represents the prejudice imposed by men in power. For instance, I don't remember if Rocio mentioned, but there was a crucial part in the story where Joe would force Janie to wear this headdress in order to hide her beautiful hair, her youth, because she was the main attraction, for me to say, of society, of the community, because she was so beautiful, she was so young, and also she was so energetic that men could notice Janie. So in order to hide that, in order to dismiss her, he forced her to wear this in order to make her submissive. And
yeah, to hide her attractiveness, like her
yes, exactly.
beauty.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And next we have the pear tree. The pear tree stands for the pure sexual desire, the feelings, the romantic feelings, as well as the sexual awakening, that Janie had. Whenever she was surrounded by these pear trees, she would have all these feelings, these sensations, these emotions that are fire, and that represents her energy, her essence, and her identity as well, because she was very fearful. No, I don't remember. She was sorry. She was very special in that manner. So that would represent the pear tree and the natural surroundings as well.
Next, we have some literary devices present in the book. And we have to mention that there are a lot of imagery and similes that this book used to convey this image that you picture in your head, in order for you to understand how she felt, and the places and the situations that she went through. First, we have a simile, which was love is like the sea. It's moving thing, but still and all it takes its shape from the shore it meets, and it's different with every shore. Then we have a simile plus an imagery. The man noticed her firm buttocks, like she had grapefruits in her hip pockets, the great rope of black hair swinging to her waist and unraveling in the wind like a plume. Then her pugnacious breasts trying to bore holes in her shirt. So here the authoress was speaking about the attractiveness of Jane. Then we have a personification. Janie looked down on him and felt a self-crushing love, so her soul crawled out from its hiding place. Danny?
Okay, so the next literal devices are imagery, hyperbole, and simile again. So the first one says, the ecstatic shiver of the tree from root to the tiniest branch, creaming in every blossom and prodding with delight. It represents the senses of the pear tree, the blossom that we've been talking about, that's so special and that takes an important place, an important part of the story. The next one says, I have been to the horizon and back. This hyperbole is placed in the end of the story, and it means that all that Janie has been through, it means that she has grown and that she has learned. And even though it is a bit extreme to say that she's been to the horizon and back, because you cannot reach the horizon, but it is a poetic way to express this situation and the whole passages and the path that she has taken. And the last one is, oh, to be a pear tree, any tree in bloom, with kissing bees singing of the beginning of the world, is a simile, and it's describing the bees, the dance of the bees when they were around the blossom and connecting with the nature, and as I mentioned before, this whole feeling. And Rocio, can you help me out here?
Yes, it was like the bees were representing the bees, and the blossoms were representing relationships like marriages and the love between the people and the marriage. Yes.
Yeah, in fact, Janie says that something like, this is marriage, about, because she would relate the bloom and the bees to how marriage could be in her imagination.
Well, then we have the themes that this book explores. We have here we have to point out that this book does not the authors in this book does not aim to touch a certain theme, right? In fact, this book talks about the life of Janie, and as Janie said, she was an anthropologist, so she would study the behavior of people in different places they lived and how they would act. So this is Janie's story and her search for identity and Janie's emancipation, and these subsequent themes born from this search of identity. And the sub themes are here at the right side. We have jealousy, mortality, because as we saw, many of Janie's husbands died, her nanny as well. Dreams, fate, free will, society, and class. Danny?
Yeah, for instance, immortality. We can see that back in those times, there were higher rates of mortality because you cannot find the how can you say that? You cannot find the solution for it, of rabbits, for example.
Cures.
The
Yes.
cure. Thank you. And another important theme here is gender inequality, because Jenny has suffered so so many like sorry, got distracted by your background. Okay, so gender inequality, because she has suffered the implication of sexism.
Yes.
She got married several times, and some of those experiences dismissed her identity, her personality, because Joe, for example, wouldn't allow her to speak up, wouldn't allow her to make contact with other people because of his jealousy. So that means that only men should remain in power, and women would be left aside or behind the men, you know. So gender inequality is present throughout the whole story, and also when women were assaulted, then Nanny was assaulted, Leafy was assaulted, they were raped by white supremacists. So race and gender inequality are strongly connected.
Yes. And then we have love, which is what Janie searches for all throughout the book. Love, to be this reciprocal love in which she gives love, and the man gives this love back, caring and this affection. So it is totally connected to gender inequality, because at that time men would think of women like objects. Joe, for example, thought about Jenny as a housewife who would clean, make food, and stay quiet. It was like an accessory. She wasn't allowed to talk. She wasn't allowed to think about anything, to give any opinion. So it was like an accessory, and therefore he was not he would not feel love for her, because you can feel love for a thing, for something that you have like an accessory, right?
And I would like to add something, that in marriage, it was just an arrangement. Marriage wasn't about love. Therefore, her dreams would fall apart, because she was in search of her true love, and she wasn't allowed to get that, because it was an arrangement. It was the proper and the most secure way to
live at that
rape.
time.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
for women.
Yes.
Yes, and then we have sex, the theme of sex, right? And here obviously it's Janie's sex awakenings, awakening, sorry. And obviously at that time in schools or teachers or not even your parents would talk to you about sex. It was like a very forbidding topic. So at the time that Nanny found out that Jenny was thinking about kissing boys and was really staring at that pear tree, imagining things, she would right away marry her with a good husband to prevent all of the tragedies that she went through. We also have maturity, which this theme goes all throughout the text. Janie starts the story with 16 years old, and this is her story of growth and maturity journey, and she learns from all these experiences throughout the years, and she ends up the story having like 30 something or nearly 40 years. So maturity and personal growth is really present in this work.
Yeah, and selfhood as well, because at the end of the story, she realizes her worth, and she gets to learn about her experiences, her previous experiences, in order to get to her own selfhood. Sorry.
Yeah.
And race, we already talked about it. And the connection to gender inequality, the difference about of being a black woman in the 1920s, 1930s, and the difference of being a white person
Yes.
In those times.
Even though abolition was what already happened, there was still obviously the rests of racism and race issues, problematics. Well, now we have the discussion. We didn't want to put any question because you may not have any question, but you may have your points of view, your opinions, or your teachings from this story. So if anyone wants to talk, just open your microphones, please.
Yeah, we're open to any of interest, any comments, any questions. If you like the book, if you do not, whether you consider this feminist premise of the time, or whether you do not consider that.
Yes.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yes, of course.
No, I was just going to say I've been listening to the story, and I think it pretty much. I think its impact could be pretty huge, like nowadays, because of the movement that is going on in all over the world, but mostly in the United States, about the Black Lives Matter. And we have heard about many Black women who have been mistreated. So I think this book it really can help people change their minds and understand better what Black people go through all their lives, because white people in comparison to Black people always have it way more easier, and I think it's something that we have to think about and we have to reflect on.
Yeah, I agree. I strongly agree with you, because in order to understand Black people's experiences, we need to read Black people. We need to listen to them. We cannot. We shouldn't be learning this historic periods by white people, because they didn't experience slavery. They didn't experience assaults. So it's really important and essential to find the source, and that the source is the person that have suffered those discriminations.
Yes, I was thinking about that and how it relates to Huckleberry Finn's story because the author wasn't a black, an Afro-American person, was a white man, and he would talk about racism and these racist topics. But it's obviously much better to hear this straight from the source, from this person who lived the racism, because obviously it's the story is going to be told differently by a person who suffered and lived this problematic. He would the person would explore different sides of it, not just how other people see the situation, but how they lived this.
And otherwise, you could be it could be like a cultural appropriation because it's not your fight, it's not your struggle, you know.
It's not your story, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Kata
Thank you,
says,
Diana.
Kata says, I feel like Janie's life was so tragic, like Black woman's real life. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And also the story of her grandmother and her mother that became a drunk person because she was also raped. So um, it's so hard to control that because men in power would do anything to get their way. So it's so sad that women and Black women had to go over this situation just because of being women and also their skin pigmentation. Sorry.
Yes, and we can see also that uh, Janie's two options when she was old enough to uh, experience love was to get married to an old man who would provide her economic stability, or to get raped by white man eventually. So those weren't good options at all. So obviously this portrays the reality, the raw reality of Black women at the time, and how hard it was for them to step forward and to do what they wanted to do. They were like hostages of this manhood and men in general, besides the racism. So there were two systems of oppression. So being Afro-American was already bad, and on top of that, you were born a woman. So it was really hard, and obviously this portrays the how hard it was to be a Black woman, and all the troubles and all these difficulties you had to go through in order to stay alive and to have a house, food, the basics, you know. So I
Yeah,
find that very sad actually.
and also the combination of races because she she was born she wasn't born Black like the rest of the community. She was a combination of both races. So her
Yes.
skin could be a bit lighter. I mean, she would still be Black, but like a lighter skin. So the people bully her because of that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like a mixture and the implications of it because she didn't feel like belonging completely to the Black community because her father was white, you know, a rapist, but he was white, and her mother was also like a mixture because her father was also white, you know, so there's like a cycle of
These mixtures, this
yeah.
mixture, yes. It was like she didn't belong to the black community on the whole or to the white community. So she was like in between, and she had these Caucasic features in her face and her body, which some people would like and some other people would refuse to
Yeah,
consider.
it's like if you were bisexual, you're neither heterosexual and neither gay nor gay. So you're like in the middle of the both um,
Yes, and at that time
situations.
it was unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it happened, but it was not seen like a very good thing. Does anyone else have any other opinion or comment about this book?
All right. I think that was a very clear book report. I liked the way you connected the idea of the legitimacy or authenticity given by the author, considering she was African American, as compared to other literary works in which were written by white people, and how authentic they are in terms of raising a voice that is not their own. Now, we may argue that somehow a white writer may have certain acceptance in certain circles of readers, and this could probably introduce the idea in their minds that slavery was morally wrong, and for some people it was harder to read literary work written by an African American or someone who had been a slave. So, how legitimate and how authentic literary work is, so it can be accepted by the audience, depending on the context and the time in which it is read. That's a very and key issue that you mentioned in the discussion, and I really liked that. And also, um, part of your discussion was that sorry.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was referring
Yeah,
to
we
this
got you
racial.
part of the discussion and then you froze.
Yeah, thank you. The racial mixture is not related only to African Americans, but all about any minority, right? It has been present with Chinese and Japanese immigrants, particularly during the wars, um, and also with Native Americans, right? So this concept of not belonging to a specific racial group because you share some of their features, but you're not 100% in terms of true blood from a specific racial group. It's something that we might just be experiencing nowadays with the flow of immigration. I think that hasn't been part of a Chilean reality, but now we should consider that a group of people not really accepting someone because that person does not share all of the racial features of that particular community. So that's something that I also liked. I'm copying and pasting now. They are um, some questions. The questions are connected with specifically identity or the search for identity that you covered. And also the type of love that she was searching for. There's also another question connected with the title of the book, okay, the title of a novel. And there's also another set of questions. So my suggestion would be uh, take any of these and choose one and develop an answer and send it to me, please. Send me the recorded answer to the mail, all right? There are several questions. Just choose the one you feel more comfortable with.
Okay.
Okay, and again, congratulations. It's a very complex book. It has many different realities and many different themes. So I think that it was quite interesting. I was not familiar with this book. I was familiar with some of the books written by her, right? And particularly when I read a bit about Harlem Renaissance. Miss Hurston was quite admirable and quite clear. With many, I like the use of the language as well. Language is quite powerful, and she switches from vernacular, right, African American vernacular, to standard English, and that's also something that is very valuable because it makes you connect more with the reality of the people when you read through the type of phonetic language that they were used. So it was quite interesting. Again, congratulations. I'm sorry we cannot stay longer to discuss the many themes that are present in this book.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your words.
Thank you, Professor.
And
Alrighty.
thank you for staying and listening.
Yes, and for your
Yeah.
opinions as well.
All right. Thank you everyone for staying. I'll see you next week. Probably when one more book report. Okay. I'll see you next week on Wednesday.
Sounds good.
Right. Thank you, Professor.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.